Thank you very much. So what I am going to present to you today is a model that was created as part of my research at Ryerson University. It is a model that nonprofits can use to launch, to plan and execute social media campaigns that is powered by storytelling. Now, in order to build this model, the research had to employ a mixed method approach of data visualization, text analysis, and social network analysis. Now, this was done by analyzing 3 successful nonprofits and their most recent social media campaigns across 3 different social media platforms. So the three nonprofits are Sick Kids, the Sick Kids Hospital, and the campaign is Sick Kids versus the Undeniable. Oh, there's some Sick Kids people here. Oh, awesome. So I analyzed Sick Kids versus the Undeniable. You can correct me if I'm wrong in any of my analysis. Not a Target by Doctors Without Borders, and I went across the border and I analyzed the ID5 campaign by Planned Parenthood Association of America. Now, what you see on the screen is I conducted some data and network analysis using a tool called Netlytic, which is a text and social network analyzer. It's cloud-based and is designed and developed by the social media lab at Ryerson University. And this was important for me because it allowed me to have a snapshot of the campaigns, whether or not how the campaigns were able to penetrate, whether or not conversations were happening in a central location, or if the campaigns were diverse in its reach. And what you're seeing on the screen is data from Twitter, and each dot represents a Twitter user. That can be either a bot, it can be an individual, or it can be an organization. And the lines represent the connection between those users, and each cluster represents a conversation that's happening. Because one of the things that I wanted to do is to look at the stories and the content that were emanating from each of the social media campaigns that were being analyzed. Now, there was some general platform-specific things that I observed. On Facebook, for example, there was a strong focus on what I call big impact stories and the personal experience narrative, which I will explain a little bit further as I delved into the model. There was also users who were both consumers and producers of content. And you will see in some examples that I have coming up. On Twitter, for example, we had a few key advocates with a lot of the campaign messages being powered by retweets. And we also had on Twitter, unlike Facebook, people were more consumers and listeners as opposed to producers of content or producers of stories. On Instagram, the organizations utilized Instagram to produce a bit of a visual and transparent view of the organization through images. They focused on the visual aspect of the campaign, and some of these are like more general information that I'm pretty sure that if you use social media, you already know, right? And again, we had on Instagram, users were both consumers and producers of content. As you can see here, for example, in this example of Sick Kids, that you had the Sick Kids Foundation, for example, putting a story out, and what you will find is that different users were actually producing their own stories in relation to what the original story was from the organization. So that was some of the general observations from the campaign. Now, to delve into the model that was created in order for you to plan and execute social media campaigns, the model rests on 5 strategic pillars. And it might look a bit intimidating, but I will, as I go along, I will break it down a little bit for you. But before we do that, I have some handouts here of the model itself. I'm not sure if I have one for everybody, but it rests on 5 key strategic pillars, and these are what I call the campaign architecture, the narratives, which is the storytelling part, and for me, that's the heart of the campaign, the platforms and deliveries, third-party resources, and social awareness, or what I call media awareness. Now, the first pillar is the campaign architecture, and for me, that is just the general aesthetics of every social media campaign, and what you will find in a social media campaign, both from whether it's for-profit, whether it's non-profit. That one is more general in its scope, and it looks at things like the start and end date of the campaign. It looks at what's the objective, what is it that we're trying to achieve, as well as who is it that we're targeting with our campaigns, what action do you want people to take, as well as the message that you're trying to put out there. The second pillar, and my favorite, I will say, is the narrative pillar. And the narrative, like I said previously, there were two types of narratives coming from each of the campaigns. And those were the big impact story and personal experience narratives. Those I will explain shortly, but there were 5 key components of each of the stories that were analyzed as part of this research. And the first one was each story had an effective character, and that is a character that is relatable to the audience that you're trying to target. There was a plot. The plot needs to chronicle something that happens, whether it's a transformation, a discovery, a journey, the authenticity, meaning you need to show people that transformation as opposed to telling them, talking to them about it. Action-oriented emotions, which is my personal favorite. And what that says is, when you're angry, or you're happy, or you're excited, you're more willing to want to take an action, as opposed to if you're sad and depressed. If you're sad and you're depressed, you want to maybe stay at home on the couch, eat ice cream, and watch, I don't know, some type of sad movie, right? So on social media campaigns, Sick Kids, Doctors Without Borders, they all use those action-oriented emotions to bring out what it is that they were trying to get out there. The hook, I think we all know that social media is very noisy today, and it's difficult to capture people's attention. So it's important that when something goes out, within the first 3 to 5 seconds, or even less, maybe, we need to capture people's attention with exactly what we're trying to do. And then the hashtag, which I will talk a little bit more about. However, here what we saw is the hashtag, especially in the Doctors Without Borders campaign and the Planned Parenthood campaign, is that they use a hashtag that transcended the campaign, meaning that I-Defy became a calling card for anybody who wanted to defy anything online, period. But then once people started using the I-Defy hashtag, everything started being tied back to the original campaign from Planned Parenthood Association. All right. Now, big impact story. What's that? The big impact story tells a story of the organization, what's it doing, what's the cause that it's championing, and ties everything back to the overarching mission and vision of that organization. Whereas the personal experience narrative took a look at the personal experience of the people that were being benefited or that benefited from the organization. So in this case, as we can see here, for example, this is a scene from the Big Impact story from Sick Kids, and what you had was they told the story. This is where the battle began in 1875. We have been fighting this battle against sickness and all illness from kids for like a very long time. There was no one specific character per se. It was not focused on any individual. However, this one was a personal experience narrative. This one did not tell the story of sick kids, but it told the story of Hartley, right? And what it is that he's fighting. So these were the narratives that were coming from the campaign, and it's important because we need to know exactly, if you're launching a social media campaign, you're trying to do anything online, you need to know the type of stories that you want to put out there in order to really get people interested in your campaign. This model was designed so that non-profits can launch their campaigns in order to, one, generate brand awareness about the cause that they're trying to champion, as well as help boost their fundraising efforts, right? Now, the third pillar focused a lot on the platforms and the deliveries. And what I mean by that is the three campaigns that were analyzed across three platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now, all three campaigns utilize YouTube as well, but I did not focus my analysis on YouTube. But what we found is some of the general information that you would already know. So, for example, on Facebook, there was a strong focus on videos and text plus images, like you saw on the previous slides. On Instagram, there were visually appealing photos, 60-second videos, as well as on Twitter, there was a strong focus on short videos, images, and 140 character text. On Twitter, for example, what we had was we had a lot of like links to third-party sites. So, for example, links to the YouTube videos, and so as opposed to on Facebook, for example, where everything was done natively, right? Everything was embedded directly into Facebook. So the next pillar of the model is the third-party resources, and that one is not something that I anticipated before I started doing this, but that it quickly became evident as the analysis was being done. And what I found was there were 4 key third-party resources that were used throughout the campaigns, and these were partnerships. So what we found was organizations, whether it's Sick Kids or whether it's Doctors Without Borders or Planned Parenthood, partnering with whether it's small business or other organizations in order to help them boost their campaign. So one of the things that was very interesting is from one of the campaigns, what I observed was small businesses running their own mini campaigns in support of the major campaign. So what you found was, hey, if you buy a coffee here, 10% of the proceed goes towards whether it's the Sick Kids campaign or whether it's the ID5 campaign, and that was very interesting, because what happened is it gave people an opportunity to participate in and to contribute to the campaigns without having to really go out of their way. If I know I can buy a coffee or buy a pop and that goes towards supporting Sick Kids, or it goes towards supporting Doctors Without Borders, then that becomes a very easy way for me to get involved in the social media campaign without having to really do much, right? Then influencers. There was a strong use of influencers, whether these were celebrities or whether these were social media influencers. So, for example, Sick Kids partnered with Ryan Reynolds, and I see the Sick Kids people are smiling. But yeah, yeah, and this type of partnerships really helped boost the campaign, because these people, they have a network of influence that they can use to really get people excited about your campaign and about what you're doing, right? The next thing was the use of service providers, and that was very interesting because what I found was organizations were using like photographers or videographers, and these people would in turn go and take to social media to help to promote their participation or their contribution to the campaign. So for example, on Instagram, you had photographers from each of the campaigns who would have taken a picture, for example, especially Sikh kids. You have photographers who would go and post a picture on Instagram and say, hey, this is a shot, or this is a photo shoot I did today for Sikh Hospital in support of the Sikh Versus campaign. And these photographers generally have their own network of influence, and that was a big deal in helping the campaigns and the success of the campaigns. And then you had third-party applications, and some of the general, like the Hootsuite and so, those are like general social media applications. But two of the applications that really stood out to me was one called Thunderclap. I'm not sure if anybody here uses a Thunderclap. Nevertheless, Thunderclap is a platform that allows people to, I guess, you can lend your social reach and your influence to a social media campaign. So what happens is you will sign up to the campaign, and on the dating question, a tweet or a post from Facebook will automatically go out on your profile, your page, or whatever it is. For example, this is one from the Doctors Without Borders campaign, and there was also the use of another third-party resource called Tweebun. Now, Tweebun was a platform or a tool that allowed you to place a border over your social media pictures in order to show that you're supporting the campaign. I'm pretty sure that many of you, if you were to go on Facebook or whatever, you normally see people posting saying, oh, I support, I don't know, France or whatever it is. So this tool allowed people to do that in order to show that, hey, we are in support of this campaign or that campaign or whatever it is, right? So the use of third-party applications was crucial in ensuring that the success of the campaign is eminent. And it can be argued, and a lot of like social media experts have made the case, and I'm pretty sure Cher can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, that the attention of our target audience is what we consider the ultimate asset online, right? This is exactly what we're trying to get. So if you would have gone through the model that I just did, and you planned your campaign, and you created your stories, and you're ready to launch a campaign, it's very important that you get that campaign in front of a lot of people. What we find happening a lot of times is non-profits will decide, hey, I'm going to launch a campaign, and I'm going to post it on Facebook, I'm going to post it on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it is, and that's it, right? But it's important that you get that campaign out in front of many people as possible and in front of the right people. So the third pillar of the model is what I call media awareness. And there's really three ways that all three of the campaigns really generated that awareness. The first one was through the use of paid media. So the Facebook ads, the Twitter ads, the Instagram ads, that was a big throughout the campaign. And then you had what we consider the owned media, which is they were using their own influences online, so their own Facebook pages, their own communities on Instagram, their own Twitters and so. And earned media meaning that the shares that they were getting or the retweets or the regrands on Instagram. But one of the things that was pretty interesting was the use of like PR to help boost the campaigns. And on Sikh Kids, for example, they gave an exclusive to the Toronto Star about the Sikh Kids campaign. It's funny because Sikh Kids actually gave like about 2 exclusives, which is kind of weird, right? Nevertheless, the Doctors Without, Planned Parenthood, for example, also gave an exclusive to Teen Vogue. So that was an interesting ton of things whereby the campaigns actually they gave exclusives to some of the media houses and some of the papers and so about what the campaign was, and that generated a lot of earned media. For example, from the Toronto Star piece, I know that generated a lot of buzz for Sikh kids in particular, right? So that's the five key pillars of the model, and what that really does is designed for social media campaigns from non-profit organizations. Doesn't matter your size, to be able to frame a narrative and to deliver the stories to a wider public, and the whole aim is to increase your online engagement, attract the potential donors, and to help boost your fundraising campaign. Now, it's interesting. One key observation that came from the analysis and of what we were doing at the social media lab is the way that these campaigns were actually launched. It was very interesting. They were all launching like some really interesting ways, and the research did not focus solely on how they were launched or what was done, but like it was interesting because, for example, Sikh Kids did this through at a Jays game, right? Which was pretty interesting because like you had about 40,000, 50,000 people at a Jays game at any time. So that was a really interesting place to launch. Planned Parenthood, for example, what they did is they live streamed a symbolic destruction of a wall. They built a wall. It had nothing to do with the wall. But they built a wall that represented what they considered outdated norms that were being imposed on them by the incoming US administration at the time. And they said, hey, you can't tell me what I can do with my body or whatever. So they built a wall and they posted all these outdated norms that there, and they live streamed the destruction of that wall. And that is what led to the launch of their campaign. So it was like a pretty, for in both Sikh Kids and Planned Parenthood case, they had some pretty experiential launches with their campaigns. And I think this type of sort of helped them with the overall success, right? So that is that. So that's that there. If any of you want a more detailed breakdown and explanation of this model and what it does, you can feel free to reach out to me. I can give you the business version, not the academic version of this model. And yeah, if any of you have any questions or so, feel free to ask me now. And I'm not sure how many time we have, but okay.